Many anime and manga series stay relevant because they don't actually really end. Maybe they stop getting chapters, but they'll get new seasons, new movies, new games, they'll get a spin-off, a sequel, maybe they'll even get a revival manga. There's always something keeping people talking about those things. Fullmetal Alchemist is very different. Its story ended years ago, and it gets very little new content, yet somehow it continues to reach new fans, sell millions of copies, and remain one of the first anime and manga series that people recommend. How does a finished story like this keep on growing? I'm Jay, Jill's husband, and I make some videos on this channel. Jill has been very busy with work lately, so I thought I would tackle this one. But this question about Fullmetal came back to me recently when I was thinking about the series because it officially surpassed 80 million copies of manga in circulation worldwide, which is huge. That is a very impressive number. But it made me ask something because it's been done for a while. How is this the case? I want to know from you, how did you first discover FMA? Did you discover it through the 2003 series, Brotherhood, the manga itself, video games? What got you into it? Because I think my answer for me isn't what most people might expect, but it does tie into today's video. For my family, when I was growing up, we didn't have that much money, so we weren't rushing out to buy anime and manga. I was very selective. I bought a couple volumes of manga a year that I could afford, and I saw Fullmetal Alchemist and The Broken Angel, a video game that I've covered on this channel, in a game store. I wanted to play it, but I didn't have money at the time, and I ended up trading my cousin for it for a different game. And that game sort of became my introduction to the series. You know, I started playing it and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I need to check this out. Then I went to my local library, which actually had anime DVDs, which I think is one reason physical media is so important. And I ended up borrowing those physical DVDs and watching Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, which was very different. I later then got into Brotherhood, and eventually I started buying both anime and the manga when I could afford them. And so when I started thinking about that journey, right, for me, I realized something, which is that FMA found me through several different doors at the same time before I ever even owned the manga that legendary creator Hiromu Arakawa created. It's very interesting to me because Fullmetal is so successful. And when we ask why is that, I think the very obvious answer is because it's a good story. And that's absolutely true. But there are a lot of other elements that tied into this. For example, one thing I've always admired about the creator, Hiromu Arakawa, is that she seemed very willing to let other talented creators bring her world to life. And there are so many examples of this. I even have an in-depth video on one that I'm making for the future. But if you look at what she did, and you look into the history of FMA, she provided concepts while allowing other authors to write things. Like, for example, even though she was the primary and sole creator, you know, who was really invested in and brought us the manga, she then allowed another author to write the light novels. And she just had minor input, some, contributions, but it was someone else. She contributed artwork and support for the video games without insisting on writing every story herself or inserting or meddling in their interpretation of her worlds. She spoke positively about projects she was not deeply involved in, and you can see that in different books, especially in the Anniversary Celebration book, which is translated to English if you are an English speaker like me. Very fun read, I do love that. And Arakawa allowed the franchise to expand into different forms of media. I honestly think that openness from the creator helped FMA reach people who otherwise might have never experienced it because they found it through a different door. If Broken Angel hadn't existed, maybe I would have eventually watched the anime anyway, I don't know, but maybe I wouldn't have ever really come across it. We don't really know. That's a way that I found it that other people might not have because I was just so obsessed with the PlayStation 2 at the time. I also think something interesting is that there was more Fullmetal content than most of us ever even got to experience. There were Japanese exclusive games that I still wish got translated. There are supplementary books that never left Japan. There are light novels that many people never knew of until recent years, and side stories like the OVAs that for a while were hard to track down. You know, ironically, I think Fullmetal Alchemist became one of the biggest anime and manga franchises in the world, even though not all of its material reached the entire world. Isn't that crazy? So much of it is region exclusive, and yet years later, we're seeing publishers revisit some of that material, we're seeing things get reprints, we're seeing the Full Metal editions, the English light novels coming back, more merchandise. Why is that though? Why is there that demand for a story that's been done for years? Because people loved it, and they are still buying it despite the fact that there's not much new content. What's really interesting to me is that there aren't a ton of people clamoring for more Full Metal. I have seen some people say, oh, you know, there is an opportunity for more stories, there is an opportunity to do side stuff or retranslate things that never left Japan, and that's true. I mean, I would love that. But a lot of long-running franchises, they survive because there's new anime, new manga, constantly a new video game. Dragon Ball is a great example of that. And I love Dragon Ball for what it is. I love the manga, I love the old Toei, 80s, 90s anime version with all those movies. I love even Super, I love the newer stuff. But for me, I'm looking at that compared to Fullmetal Alchemist, and that is worlds apart. It's totally different. When something with Full Metal does happen, it's unexpected. It always feels like a new celebration of a story that was and is still amazing. It doesn't really feel like an attempt to stay relevant or release new material. With Fullmetal Alchemist, one thing I think is really awesome is there's so many different versions you can enjoy, from the original manga from Hiromu Arakawa, to the light novels, to also the video games, to the 2003 anime, to Brotherhood. There's so much out there, and so many new generations discover it, whether it be through one of these means or through coming across it on a streaming service, whatever it is, it gets recommendations, it ends up collabing with a mobile game or whatever it is, it gets reprinted. I think that this is really special, and it's one reason why I think we are at 80 million copies in circulation and growing of this classic manga, because there are people like me who found it through a video game in their local library, and there are people as well who found it just straight up scrolling Netflix or Crunchyroll at one point. Maybe that's the real reason Fullmetal Alchemist has lasted. It's not because it never ended, it's because people keep introducing it to someone else through word of mouth, through recommendation, because it has so many amazing entry points. Now, could Hiromu Arakawa revisit the world of FMA someday? Absolutely. I'd be interested in another story if she was telling it and it was good, and I'd especially love to see some of those Japan exclusive games be translated, because so many of them have not gotten official or even unofficial translations. But maybe the greatest compliment that we can give Full Metal as just a community is that it doesn't even need a constant stream of sequels or new content to remain one of anime's defining stories. I look at how I found it through this unconventional way, and I'm still collecting Full Metal years later. And judging by 80 million copies out there, I'm clearly not the only person whose journey with Fullmetal Alchemist has lasted for their lifetime. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support this channel, we appreciate it very much. We also have ways to support the channel and our other channels on the screen right here, and there are other channels in our link tree down below. And as well, Jill has her own store, cosmobunny.shop. This is a fantastic store if you love art and you love the past coming back in new and unexpected ways. We make all kinds of things out of repurposed manga that has been damaged. We take that, we turn it transformatively into new art through coasters, keychains, trays, and other resin pieces, and recycle the rest to keep it out of landfills. You can use code SAILOR for 10% off your first purchase, and Jill works very hard over there, so we'd love to see you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great day. Bye!